was traveling, when we were traveling, she got a cold, and it really sucked because I ended up getting it. And so last week, for like 3 days, I was a big baby. And I still have some remnants of it, but I think I'm doing pretty good now.
Yeah, that's cool.
I was like, don't. I'm trying to do a podcast with Barry. He gave me like the death nail here.
The worst thing about colds for me is that they just make me so tired.
Oh, same.
And I hate being tired. I really do.
I do too. And just, and she was real tired too. So we were both like, who's going to make dinner?
Pizza. So we are live. Barry Edwards, Merle Garrison.
Hi.
We are live here. So our podcast. And you know what we did not touch upon nearly enough last time is your jaunt, your career, where you are right now. It's very interesting. And it was really interesting us going through it together, talking through it, what you were going through when with your last company and they changed management and you were killing sales there. You set the record, correct?
Yeah. Well, a couple times we had the largest sale in the industry at one point. I don't know if that's been eclipsed, multiple millions of dollars. And then last year, the largest sale of the year came through my organization as well. Also another multi-million-dollar deal with a large college hospital up in the Chicago area. So it was a big win, something I'd been working on for several years. These deals that we worked on, they typically took within a year to even up to 5 years to be able to close these long-term complex
medical
sales.
Equipment, just to clarify.
Well, it's in the healthcare arena, but it was more app-driven communication, holistic communication, so that when alarms and alerts happen, there's a coordinated response and nothing falls through the cracks. And pretty cool. It'll save your life.
Yeah, exactly. And what I love about that kind of thing, and part of, by the way, I just sent you an email with the Over 50 Starting Over logo and a link to the website, which is just over50startingover.com.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
I like how you put that plug in there. I like that.
You're
smooth, man.
And I have to design our cover yet. So I wanted to get a couple of these podcasts under our belt before I upload them. And we're getting there very quickly. But what I like about what you were selling, and similarly, my girlfriend Lisa is at a hospital, and she is director of business development at a local hospital. Of course, that's a big deal in Cleveland. Yeah. And I just love the fact that you can be in a space where you're making such positive change. You have real purpose when you get up in the morning. When
that's
you
the
realize
thing, that. You know what? That is the thing. I mean,
it's
if
huge.
You can, I tell you what, when I moved out here to California, I was working a different job that I didn't really care for. And a cousin of mine who's about 15 years older than me invited me over to his house. He's lived out here for about 40 years. And my wife and I went out there, and he took me into his office, and there were trophies everywhere in his office. And I said, wow, well, what do you do, Keith? His name is Keith. What do you do? And he says, I haven't worked a day in my life. And I said, well, obviously that's not true. You've got all of these trophies over here, so you're doing something. And he said, well, hey, when you love what you do, it's not work any longer.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, Barry, I was kind of ticked off when he said that, because I was working a job I hated.
Yeah.
And
we've all been there.
It was a grind. And here he was getting all these trophies and acting all happy. It got to me. And one thing led to another, and I ended up in this business that I got to be a partner in. And I really got to run the whole sales show, and it became a love of mine. And the big deal was two things. One, I had a technology that could save lives. And if the technology had been around when my dad was alive, it may have saved his own life.
I recall you
And
telling me that.
yeah, so something that I could take to heart, and I could go out there and not sell, but evangelize. And then I put people around me that had that same kind of heart that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And boy, did we ever have a good time. And I'm
Yeah.
telling you, Barry, when just like what you're saying, when you find something that you have that kind of passion and love for,
Get you out of bed in the morning.
yeah, like you can't wait for morning to come.
You
And
know,
it's such a difference between you know,
oh, it's all the difference
morning.
in the world. It's the difference between I have to do this now versus I get to do this.
Yeah, I get
It's
to do
all
this.
the difference in the world. It's kind of like being self-employed my entire adult life. You go
Yes.
through struggles from time to time and listen to podcasts about productivity tips and things like that. So as in sales, you got to be very self-motivating,
Well, sure.
So,
But here's
a tip.
a big difference, though. In sales, there's always someone that is standing behind the corner with a whip,
Ha ha ha.
causing
That's
you
true.
to. You can't rest on your laurels. But
Very true.
the big difference is you've been running your own business for decades now, and there's no one there except for yourself. So.
Right.
Kudos to you for running a successful business like that. But
Well, thank you.
how do you do it? How do you motivate
I
yourself?
was going to say that there's a segue to a tip. There's always different tips. And I go through phases where I'm not as successful at doing that. I fall into traps. Social media, it took a while to get through the social media trap when that first came around 11 years ago or so. It was about 11 years ago. And but one of the biggest productivity things that gets to what we were talking about is putting things down. You're worked out when you got to do things. I go to the gym or I go shopping.
Right.
I break things up. But
Yeah.
put it down when you're actually into something that you're enjoying. Instead of like, oh, I don't want to do this right now. I'm going to go do that shopping. And then you got this hanging over your head, this
Yes.
shit that you got to do that you don't want to do. No, stop in the middle of something that you're enjoying. That's a good tip.
I like what you're saying. So that then when you come back to it,
I
it's
get to do this rather than
what a
I
great
have
tip
to do
that
that.
is.
It's,
Okay.
it's
Why
not my
did you
own.
wait? We've been friends for like 30 years now, right? You waited 30 years to tell me this one? Come on,
Yeah,
man.
I've only learned that one probably 4 years ago or so. I think via a podcast.
No, that's a really good one. I love that one.
It
And
truly
yeah, the
is.
power of
Here's another
podcasts.
one, man. Whatever you do first thing in the morning, like, I come into my office, don't play a video game on your computer because that's
hilarious.
your momentum. Whatever you do is the first thing.
The
when
first thing
get
you
into
did was
office.
procrastinate, is what you're saying, and
Yeah,
that
it
kind of sets
puts
the
you.
tone for the rest of the day.
Yeah, it does. It puts you in a bad frame of mind.
Hey,
As soon, even going down the email trap, which is what I do a lot, is they start
think
dictating
everyone
your day.
yeah,
I know.
It's the tail wagging the dog, right?
Yes. And I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
Well, I kind of forgot that happened.
It's all right. I did want to get back to where you are now. You know what? I really want this story to come out, to play out. We can talk about it through multiple podcasts. We don't have to go through every detail right now, but I absolutely am in awe and inspired by you went through a horrific situation with your career recently and turned it into the biggest positive ever.
Well,
And you and I talked through it while you were going through it. And you are very inspiring. Your faith is a large part of your fuel. But why don't you, if you can kind of put a summary on how you went from being tops in sales, setting records, to a horrific situation.
Well, there are things that I can't talk about legally.
Okay.
However, It really was a situation where I had been on top of the game for quite some time, really managed this business called Extension Healthcare to success. The business started out when I came there in 2011, making about $1 million a year before that, and throughout the next several years, I was promoted into the vice president of sales. And we took that business from a $1 million business to within 5 years, a $26 million business, culminating in a gigantic $11 million sale, which got the attention of a medium-sized, very popular communication company in the healthcare business that was publicly traded called Vocera Communications. And they actually bought Extension Healthcare for about $56 million. So it was a big success story. This was, taking a ground floor opportunity to really the dream of being able to sell that. I was a partner in the company as well. So this was a tremendous success story for me and the company and everybody that was a part of the business. Well, the business changed a bit once we became a part of Vocera, but several of us stayed on, including myself, and I retained a pretty nice position in the VP position there. Go ahead, Barry.
You did say the name of the company.
I did. Was that bad?
Oh, I was only saying that because you said there's things you can talk about.
No.
Just
I
wanted
mean,
to let
obviously
you know.
anybody could look up and see where I worked. It's no secret
Okay.
where I worked.
All right.
The problem was that management changed about a year and a half into the whole gig, and we had been, clipping along. And when management changed, a lot of things changed with the business. And this is not unlike a lot of other Fortune 500 companies, or really the business environment. But what had happened was at the end of a particular year, last year, I had closed the largest sale in the company, about $7 million. And within the next few months of doing that and making about 96% of quota, I was demoted. And not only that, I was demoted into a position that really didn't have any opportunity. So I had to create my own opportunities. I was clipping along pretty well doing that. I had to change my attitude and look at the positive side. And there was a way to be very successful there. But they really pulled the rug out from under me and didn't give me a chance and put me on a performance improvement plan. Bottom line is that was devastating for me. But, looking at the faith side of things, I realize that all things work together for good for those who are called according to his plan. And I know that includes all believers, that would be me included. And so I started thinking, this is probably leading to some place of very good. I just can't see what it is right now.
Right.
And, the worst thing for me to have is a lot of animosity over what had happened. Hey, the bottom line is this, Barry, that's business. Business happens. They're going to make decisions that you're not going to be in control of, and you're not always going to be happy about. But here's the deal is that I just believe that no matter what happens in my life as a believer, I'm going to end up on top. And so this really inspired me to start to look at, well, what are the things that I really like to do and the things that give me joy? Like we talked about before, what are the things that
it's what I was talking about in the last podcast.
Yeah. And so I started talking to you about this, and here we are. We're doing this right now, and it's. I just kind of feel that that's how life is. When life gives you a lemon, you can make a lemonade out of it, and that's
agreed.
Your choice.
You have to be willing to open the doors, though. Okay, that's the only way your opportunity is going to present itself is if you open doors. And there's not a great opportunity behind every one, but if you open up several, it will find you. I mean, the whole over 50 starting over concept originated, this is coming full circle. What you're talking about was if I'm not doing what I really want to do, what I'm enjoying, if I'm not enjoying what I'm doing for a living, then it's my own limited beliefs that is keeping me stranded in that place.
I agree.
So if you're in a job that you just do not enjoy, now if you're in your 20s, that's probably the case. But you then have the opportunity to navigate your career as you gain experience and go job to job and so forth. But if you're in a career or a job that you're not enjoying, it's because of your limited beliefs that you don't think that you deserve better. And I speak from experience. And in your faith has guided you in that regard. With me, I've had I do a lot of, I battle it. So I'm not going to say I overcame something, but I do a lot of, this is a beautiful day and age of technology, a lot of self-hypnosis on YouTube videos where I just put in the earbuds, I turn on, and there's all kinds of hypnosis videos out there on the subject, limited beliefs, whatever it may be. I don't care what it is. Anxiety, it's all the same. Any discomfort that we have emotionally comes from anxiety. It all comes from the same root. There's not there's
I so agree with you, Barry.
thousand different names for them, but it's all the same thing.
Well, wait, this is so fascinating to me that you're saying this now. And I totally agree with you that there is a root of where all of this comes from. And anxiety is you're chasing the root right down to the bottom of the root. Now, core, I think there's a deeper level than anxiety. And I think that deeper level is fear.
Anxiety is synonymous. Anxiety is fear.
And then I'm going to take it one more step, and I'm going to say fear is based on condemnation of self.
Ooh, I have another definition, and it's I want to explore yours, but I'm just going to put this out there too. Okay. Most people will say, psychologists, what have you, will say that anxiety, the very definition of it, is not being in the present. Regrets from the past or fear of a future that's unknown, that has not presented. But if you are in the present and stay in the present and say, well, okay, I'm not fearing for my life right now. Everything's fine. Then and if you can string together many of those moments in the present, you now just battled and conquered anxiety.
Well, and you think about it, Barry, is that fear is probably 100% related to something that you're dealing with from your past or something that you're thinking about in your future.
Correct.
But not right now.
Exactly.
You could be in a state of perfect harmony in the moment, but you're screwed up over all of these different thoughts. And when I said
perspectives,
and so perspectives, that's a
good way of
can
be changed. That's the point.
And so it's how you see yourself and how you see your situation. Now, in the Bible, it says that faith comes from hearing and hearing. Now, it's interesting. It says it twice, hearing and hearing, but it also says, how are they going to hear without a preacher to help them? And so just like you were saying, you're listening to podcasts, you're listening to intelligent people that have wisdom, and you're pumping that into your consciousness. And what happens is you're planting seeds into your brain, the fertile soil, and those things start to grow, maybe not immediately, but they start to grow. And as they grow into strong oak trees or even redwoods that can't
if you nurture them
down very easily. Right. But that's right. You have to nurture them. And by doing that, you have to hear and hear, and then you have to practice what you hear. And so these things start to become strongholds in your life. Now, it can work the opposite way as well, is that if I'm hearing and then believing in something about fear, then those things also become strongholds in my life as well. And then I have knee-jerk reactions to those things. And those things can be broken, but you have to work on those.
Yeah. Another thing you just made me think of, something I discovered Breaking Bad. Did you watch that show? Really? I discovered it when it was in its final season, because all of a sudden everyone was talking about it. So I had 5 seasons at my disposal to binge watch.
How did that?
binge watching that on my computer where I could fast forward through any slow part or anything like that. And it was the best show I ever saw.
Really?
Then I
Okay.
watched it again with Lisa, and she'll
Right.
tell you the same thing. Best show I ever saw. Holy shit.
Really? Okay.
Point though is it was by about the second season I had to stop for a couple weeks because it's a dark show, man, and it was starting to affect me. And what I learned from Breaking Bad is
Yeah.
that I carry with me to this day, because I also
That's
I have bouts where I really battle depression.
right.
And what you put into what we're talking about, what you ingest, and just like food, okay, food for your brain, what you ingest is shapes who you are that next day. So I really watch what I watch at night before I go to bed. You know what I watch more than anything these days?
What's that?
Stand-up comedy.
Mm.
I got Amazon Prime, Netflix, all of that. Try to find something that's not dark. It's hard to do. Documentaries.
It is hard. It's very
Everything's
hard.
dark, man.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's really funny that you brought up Breaking Bad and then told that story. And I told you I never watched it. Here's why I never watched it.
Oh.
My brother, Scott, called me up and he said, hey, I love the show Breaking Bad. Have you ever watched it, Merle? And I said, no. And he goes, don't watch it. You won't like it. And I said, you know me and I trust you and I'll never watch it. And he said, he told me exactly what you just told me, that there's a darkness to it. And I'm very, very sensitive to that. And just like you said, I have to be very careful about what I put into my computer, and then not just at night, but all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm very sensitive to just, that I don't want to be in darkness, and I can feel it. And sometimes I have to get away from certain things or certain communications because those things have an impact. And I know it's not just me that they're impacting.
No. You and we really got away from social media for a large part. And
Because of
it's
that.
because of the negativity.
Yeah.
And I have to be on there to a degree because of what I do, online marketing. But I really keep a distance. If I'm just scrolling through a Facebook feed, I can feel the negativity start to build.
Me too.
And that's when I got to shut that off.
Yeah,
You know?
me too. I am, again, very sensitive to that. And I feel, I got to tell you, Barry, as far as Facebook goes, I feel like we've been tricked, to be honest with you, because I remember. Well, I remember when it first came out, and I was really excited about it because
catch up with people you haven't seen in decades.
All my friends from high school, that I can find out what happened and see what they look like now, and find out about their families.
They're a dick today. They're dicks.
So so that's what ended up happening is that first I connected up with all of my friends, and it was a wonderful reunion. I had a great time in high school, and it was just really fun. But then, as a few years went by, people started floating political thoughts on Facebook.
Oh, that's where
and then, of course, hey, I've got some political thoughts as well. And of course, I'm a conservative. I did not know that almost all of my friends think different, or acquaintances, I would have to say now, think completely differently than I do. And they started to shame me about how I saw the world, and I just realized that just isn't good for me. And I don't, just putting out my thoughts and then having multiple people from my past tell me what a bad guy I am wasn't really doing me any good. So I stopped doing that.
Same here. And then you go down the rabbit hole where now you got to Google a bunch of crap that supports your thinking, while they Google a bunch of crap that supports theirs. It's endless.
What is up with that? What is up with that? Because my brother-in-law is here this week, and my wife and I and Paul, Anne-Marie and Paul, we've had these exact same discussions about, where are your sources? Like you speak to somebody, or here's another one. How do you know? Were you there? Okay, well, if that's the criteria now for knowing what the truth is, then all of us know very little In
Mhm.
fact, my whole faith as Christianity, none of us were there to see the resurrection. So how could we even have faith that way? I mean,
Right.
this is a ridiculous precedent that we're setting where we have to
Sure.
have Google sources for everything that we believe. And not only that, they've got to be the right sources. Why can't
Mm.
somebody just have an opinion without having to bring all your
Yeah, I mean,
footnotes and your bibliography along?
if it passes the common sense test, you know,
Yeah.
there's
What
just
what
things
happened
that,
to that?
yeah, exactly. Just common sense. Does it hurt or does it harm?
Right.
The worst is, boy, I try to stay very moderate, but today what I'm very bothered by is the short-sightedness. It's just like
Agreed.
the short-sightedness. You can only see what is exactly right in front of your face. For
Right.
instance, let's pay people to have children out of wedlock.
Oh boy.
Now, where does that get you? I think that we even touched on that
Extreme
in the last.
poverty.
Yeah, that's exactly it. How do you not see it? Well, you can't let those kids starve. Totally understand that. There's not a perfect
That's the
answer,
hard part,
but
right?
incentivizing that has destroyed our society.
Well, it's the hard part because what we see people suffering, and for the most part, I really believe that people that have a different political opinion than me, we both have the same thing in our heart. We want to help.
Exactly.
It's hard to see
Yeah.
this, when you see
Yes,
people, human suffering is the hardest thing to see possible. And I'll tell
it
you what, I'm
is.
very empathetic. If I see someone on TV, even on TV crying, I have a very hard time not crying.
You're
So
very
I
empathetic.
feel
Yes.
people's pain. But
Hmm.
here's the thing is that, you know, just like my growing up, my father, he did pretty good. He was a VP in a company and he made pretty good money. But
Hmm.
anytime I wanted something, he told me to get a job and go buy it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I thought, "Oh, what?" Anyway, this instilled something into me.
Absolutely.
He could have gotten out there and bought it. That
You
would have
could have
been
been
easy.
entitled. Yeah.
I could like, I could have. Yeah, that wouldn't have worked though with my father. But
Never. Never.
but he taught me that, hey, if you want something, go out and work for it. And then I remember the first thing that this happened when I wanted a tape recorder. I've always had this dream of being on the radio, and so I wanted this tape recorder. I was 8, and he told me I had to go work for it, and it was $30. I mean, $30
Ooh,
for an
back
8-year-old.
then, that
Yeah,
was a
that's
lot of money,
it might
man.
as well have been $1 million. I mean, it was $30. I remember there was this catalog. It was the best catalog, not Best Buy. It was a whole different thing, but
Oh,
$30. So I went around. I was only 8, so there was limited things I could do. I was cleaning toilets. I was
wow.
cleaning gutters. I was doing disgusting work and everything. And I remember the day I had the $30, and my dad took me down to the store. He had to put in a ticket, and then they sent it down this conveyor belt and everything. And I remember it coming down the conveyor belt, Barry. I was so excited. And
Yeah.
I have still today, I have hours and hours and hours of recordings I made from back
Ah,
then. And
wow.
yeah, and obviously it made a lasting impact on me because here we are.
Yes.
But I can tell you the pride that I had over that tape recorder. I had that tape recorder for about 25 years before I finally threw that out. It was still working. It was an old Panasonic. But here's the point. When you do it yourself, you care for it. You take care of it. You take pride in it.
Yeah.
It changes your life. Now, if he had given it to me,
Mm,
we may not be on this podcast today, Barry.
agreed. Agreed. You would not have valued it.
No,
It
I
would
wouldn't.
not. You would not have treasured it at all.
No, no. I mean, there was a lot of toilets represented by that tape recorder, and I had to make that pay off. So
Yes. Yes.
anyway, and I'm just saying, in today's world, what we're seeing people with these broken hearts over the situation that we're seeing all around us, and they want to help, but what they're doing is they're giving them something for free, and
Oh,
when
it's
that
it's
happens,
horrible.
we don't respect things that we get for free. We don't value things that we get for free. And I take a look at some of the areas, even some of my family live in, the projects, and these places are bastions of just destruction, crumbling
Look at
walls, and people don't take pride in what they have when it's been given to them.
Oh, to say the least. Look at the homeless problem in LA. And I was just out there with you a few months ago, and I just remember going to, you took me to Santa Monica
Yeah.
Beach,
Yeah.
and oh, geez, the line of beat up, rusted up campers. They have free beachfront property
Yeah.
in the
How does
most
that?
beautiful area in the world. And then I'd be like, look at that piece of plastic over there. And you're like, yeah, that's someone's home.
Yeah, right. I mean, people don't understand. And there's homeless. The homeless situation is all over the country. I grew up in Cleveland with you,
Mhm.
and I saw it all my life, but
Yes.
I've not seen anything like what I'm seeing out here right now. I
Why
mean,
is that?
people.
Doesn't it come right back to what we were talking about?
Yes,
It's because you're
yes,
giving
it
people free
does.
stuff. Now, admittedly, there's a huge mental illness problem in this country that we do not know how to deal with.
That's exactly right.
That's for real. And I don't know if we were talking about LA. I think LA's homeless problem is very different from most of the rest of the country. Because I think here in Cleveland, people that are homeless are more or less
Yeah.
mentally for the most part. And I think in LA, you speak to it because
Well, yeah, I would have to say that it's the same here too. I mean,
okay,
what we're seeing here is a lot of mental illness on the street and also a lot of drug addiction. So
oh,
it's really
sure,
the two things. We've got a huge heroin and meth problem out here, and
all over the country.
and
Yeah,
it's not just look, the heroin and meth problem is not just affecting people, the poor. It's
Mhm.
affecting all stratas of our society right now. I had a
It
guy.
is.
He looked like a businessman. I live in a townhouse, and I was going out to walk my dog a few months back, and I have to walk through this gate, and I had to. There was a guy on the other side of the gate just passed out in front of the gate. I couldn't get out, and I had to wake him up. The guy looked like he was a 45-year-old businessman. He had a real nice
Wow.
bicycle right there that he had pulled over, and so the guy obviously had money, but he was completely unconscious. I had to shake him to wake him up so he could move out of the way. And then I told him, "Look, buddy, you're gonna have to leave this area. You can't sleep here." And he seemed incoherent. And I said, "Look, I'll be back in 5 minutes, and by then, you should be able to have enough time to move along." Well, I came back in 5 minutes, and he was still there, and and this was like the middle of the day too, and I was just like,
Oh,
"All right, buddy,
whoa.
time to go." And he mocked me the whole time. He imitated me. "All right, buddy, time to go." But he
What
was,
was he messed up?
yeah, he was.
Intoxicated?
Yeah, I think he was on heroin.
Oh,
Heroin is the big deal out here, and I know out there as well.
I've heard this is the scary part is I heard that fentanyl is
Yeah,
the
it's
big deal
scary.
now. And it's
It's
so
horrifying.
scary, so deadly, so addictive. Well, here's the whole argument about legalized drugs versus illegal drugs is because they're putting fentanyl in everything now, even pot sometimes.
What?
So you're
What? I
getting
haven't
that
heard
shit
that.
off the street, man.
Yeah.
And if that got some halfway crappy pot, but you mix it with some fentanyl, and I don't even know what fentanyl is. Is it a powder? Is it a liquid? I don't know, but somehow you mix that in with almost anything, and you get in. Now all of a sudden, people are like, "Wow, that felt really special. I need more of that."
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And it's killing people left and right. I
Yeah,
mean,
so
it's
that's the argument. It's a big part of the argument versus just legalizing all drugs. And I've always thought that we should experiment with that. Um, Literally, just anything you want, you can get it for free, but it comes with a whole lot of pamphlets, medical material that tells you about the dangers or how to get out of addiction and all these different options. But at least you're going to get clean drugs rather than fentanyl laced stuff. I don't know. I've thought about this my entire life. How we've had this conversation back in college, and I don't know the answer, but I think it should be experimented with.
I just read this amazing book called It's Okay to Leave the Plantation by C. Mason Weaver. And this he speaks as he's a black guy who he wrote this book back in the late 90s, and he was saying that what's happening right now is really the destruction of our society. And what he said was that he felt as a black man that he was a Democrat all of his life, and he came to an epiphany where he thought, well, hey, the Democrats are the party of the poor, and they're for the little guy.
Oh, they'll keep you
and,
poor.
and helping out the little guy. But the Republicans are the party of the wealthy, and they want people to be wealthy. And so then he started to think, well, wait a second. And this guy, he grew up in the 60s. He was in Nam. He saw all of that stuff, and was he actually the day he went to Nam was the day Martin Luther King was assassinated, and he had a real chip on his shoulder. But when he started thinking about this, he thought, well, wait a second, doesn't that incent the Democratic Party to put policies together that would keep people in poverty so that they would keep on voting Democrat?
Yes.
And wouldn't the Republicans then be putting policies together to help everyone become wealthy? And doesn't that equate to my liberty and my freedom? And he started looking at things like, for instance, he was looking at what was happening in the inner city with these project areas and the ghettos. And we all have people, family members that are there, and we can see the mentality that's there, which is, hey, first off, there's an incentive to keep men out of the family. Hey, if you have a child, that you can get money from the government, but if you're married, you're not going to get that money. So there's an incentive not to marry. Well, today we have 75% of the black population being born without a father. And you and I know how we would have turned out if we didn't have a father in our life. Right. And so this is where one of the roots of the problems are with the youth and black on black crime, and this huge problem that nobody is addressing. But what you'd
be called a racist when you start talking about it.
Well, and you started out saying this is that, hey, don't they see what this is doing? Well, here's the problem with that whole thing, Barry, is that we have politicians that are pulling at our heartstrings because this is a devastating situation. And we're pumping more and more money into this, which obviously helps the politician to get reelected. But we're hearing all of this flowery speech and talk, and obviously it's a terrible situation. But what are the results? What are the results of these programs that we're putting out there right now? And if we start really looking at results-oriented policies and judging our policies in that type of light, we can see what's happened to our inner cities. Look at Los Angeles, look at San Francisco, look at New York, look at Chicago. By the way, these are all Democrat-run cities, and you've got a cesspool, a literal cesspool in on the sides of the streets. There's defecation on all streets. There's dirty needles. Gosh, down at Venice Beach just the other day, Barry, where we were bike riding, they had to close the beach. Why? Because there were used needles all over. You should see the pictures. Used needles everywhere on the beach. You know what, Barry? The other day I was down at the beach with my wife, and we were walking along the beach. We love going down there. It's beautiful.
Sure, it's beautiful.
And especially being from Cleveland, this is a real treat for us. And so I decided, I had my shoes on, and my kids were making fun of me about how I never take my shoes off. And I decided, now I'll show them, I'm going to take my shoes off. So I took my shoes off, and within 3 steps, Barry, a bee stung me on the bottom of the foot.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you stepped on a needle.
Okay, well, that's what I thought it was. I thought I had stepped on a needle, and I was horrified. But when I picked up my foot and saw a bee down there, it didn't make me feel that much better.
That's funny, though.
I haven't been stung by a bee since I was a kid. So I was like, either. Am I allergic? I'm feeling kind of nauseated.
Oh man,
that's what's happening, man. It's quite a thing down here, and I don't know how it's going to change. I really don't know how it's going to change.
I don't either. The conundrum that there's no easy answer to is animals and humans, we're at the top of the food chain, but we are too compassionate. So animals, like death, is natural to them. And because we have consciousness, we have taken the concept of death way too far. It's way too scary. It's way too big of a thing for us. We fear it so much because we can think about it and talk about it and so on.
Agreed.
Whereas for animals and stuff, it's perfectly natural. I'm here today, I'm food tomorrow for someone else, And so, because we have this huge irrational fear of death, we then talk about the value, the sanctity of a human life. Oh my God, there's a spark, save it. And truth of the, and so there's animals, lots of species that will kill their young, the ones that are inferior. They'll just kill them.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's survival of the fittest. And that is the natural way of nature. And we're now unnatural because we can control damn near everything, which is funny, except Mother Nature. Just when we think that we got the world by the balls, tsunami comes or something like that and shows us who's really in charge.
Right.
But that's the problem that we've found ourselves in is, for one, when we were kids, there were 4 billion people in this planet. Now there's 7 billion.
Right.
Yeah, way too many people. And a lot of them cannot work because of different ailments or whatever, age even, or as we discussed before, mental illness, any kind of incapacitations. They're countless. But that's kind of like, this is the conundrum, is we just keep, oh my God, human life is so valuable. So let's save everybody. Let's, make a socialist system to make sure that everybody has everything. And I'm the first one to say that I believe in the greatest country in history, the United States. I do believe everybody should be entitled to health care. Absolutely. I do believe everybody should no one should starve. And what happened to water fountains? They used to be everywhere. Now they're nowhere. Well, that's a serious question. What's behind that movement?
I want to address that, but I want to go back to the sanctity of human life thing, because I think that's a pretty big issue these days. And I happen to be one of those guys that believes,
I figured as much,
in the sanctity of human life. And I believe what it says in the Bible, that we were made in God's image. And according to our founding documents, the Declaration of Independence, that's what they believed as well. And they believed that each one of us, being made in God's image, have these rights that God gave us, not the government, but God gave us these rights, and the reason we have these rights are we're like him. We're his children. And so like him, we have certain liberties that we're allowed to have. That's why it's government by the consent of the people, because who can govern God unless it's by his consent? And so when we take a look at human life, and I love what you were saying about the socialistic plan of trying to save everybody. But if you take a look at how capitalism has worked here in America,
survival of the fittest.
Well, when America was founded, the average lifespan was 40 years. And here we are in 2019, and now the average lifespan is above 80. Well, how did that happen? Well, capitalism spawned creativity.
Yes.
When you remove all of the obstacles to human creativity, and most of that is oppressive government, then what you're going to and you add in the free market, where people can
incentive.
Suddenly there's no barriers to what you can earn or the lifestyle that you can attain. People become very creative at that point.
It incentivizes creativity.
Yeah. And see, now here's the other thing about the founders, is they believed in something called the natural law and the laws of God. And so there are certain ways of human life that human nature, that our laws should be guided around. And so that is, we are born free with liberty. And when we have liberty, these beautiful things happen. Creativity happens. And look at the inventions that have come out of the United States.
Oh, God,
The
yeah.
car, the airplane, look at all the medical advances that have
Medical.
happened.
Yeah.
And these are all there to prolong our lives. Now,
Yeah.
here we are in a situation where it's the question, do we want to continue on with this constitutional government, or do we want to become a socialist country? Well, over the last 90 to 100, actually, for over the last a little over 100 years, we've been moving more and more towards a socialist type of a government and away from a
Definitely.
constitutional government. And what's happened is we're squashing the creativity aspect for large communities right now.
Mhm.
And I just think that, yes, I don't think that healthcare is a right, because rights come from God. But God does provide you with health. And, and here's the other thing is you look at, I talked to this guy recently who was saying, man, the Christians aren't doing anything. They're not helping the sick. And I said, what are you talking about? Almost every hospital I see has a cross on it. I mean,
Uh,
the hospitals, the charities, are you kidding me? This is what they're doing. I really believe that we need to, as a society, move things out of our centralized government and into the place where it's supposed to be, which is the private sector.
yeah.
And this is where charity can happen. You see, when you're being taxed upwards of 40 to 50% of your income, it's pretty hard to give to charity. Well, it's
Uh,
because, go ahead.
uh, Before the late 60s, when we started pumping all the welfare programs up, uh, we used to do things Blue Cross, Blue Shield, United Way. We were hugely charitable as a nation. But then welfare took that over and screwed everything up. I want to challenge you with something, though. I want to put this out in a conversation.
Yeah.
These are just my thoughts, but talking about the two most important socialistic institutions that we have, healthcare and education.
Hmm.
Okay. I think everybody should be entitled to top notch of both. And how do you do that? Look what has already happened to our healthcare institution over the last 20 years, 30 years.
Right.
It is because it is largely in a socialistic kind of way. I don't know if I should say that. Here's what I'm saying though. I see this model for both healthcare and with education, and that is I'll take education. I think it's an easier one to wrap our head around. So as it is primarily funded by the government right now, public schools, and
Right.
we know what a controversy it is as to their effectiveness or lack thereof. I think they suck overall, and they're getting suckier
They are.
all the
I
time.
agree. Yeah.
So what I propose is that a marriage between capitalism and socialism. The government, first of all, I don't think the government should run anything. They can't run a driver's license bureau worth of shit, you know?
Yeah.
They certainly should not be running our public schools. So we hire, let's say, 100 companies to run different school districts, and whoever the top one or top five or whatever that are getting the best performance will get the lion's share of the contracts. And
I
they're
like
always being assessed. And so they will always change. They're always competing.
Well, the idea of competition is exactly what we need in education, and
Same
that's
with
what's been
health.
taken away through the unions. There's no
Oh, yeah.
competition.
Yes. And they got corrupt. Like as soon as they were created, boom, corrupt.
Right.
You know? And
I
that's
agree.
what corruption always happens. And like we've had this discussion so many times, the founding fathers of this country, I do believe divinely inspired when they wrote the Constitution.
I agree with that.
framework. Yeah, we've had this conversation before. It's just, and we still manage to screw it up and to become corrupt. And
Because
the
we're
two-party
humans.
system, pardon?
Because we're humans.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very true. And at our core, there's a greed. There's a greed at the core of humans that capitalism actually uses. Okay.
Yes.
It incentivizes,
Yes.
okay, if you want something, work hard for it, and everybody wins for the most part. Uh, so, yeah, what do you think of that system? So even with the healthcare system, so you got the top 100 companies that are, healthcare is trickier because then you divide it up with healthcare providers, doctors, and so forth. But then you got insurance, and that's where it gets messy.
Yeah, let's go back to because that's a lot. Let's
It's
let's go back to
a lot to
education.
unpack.
Yeah,
And
let's unpack
we're
that one.
50 minutes in, and I do want to get to some
Did you
current
just say
events.
50, 50? Holy,
Yes,
how does this happen?
I know. We will have to get to current events. This is a conversation that we could have forever anyway. But go ahead
I
with what you
agree.
said.
I love your idea about the competition piece. I obviously there would be some things that would pop up as red flags. Who are those 10 companies, let's say, and
Sure.
what type of what is their agenda? And here's the other
Run
thing:
by
we also
Hunter
have to
Biden.
look out. We also have to look out for, you know. Actually, I kind of lost. You said Hunter Biden. Now I kind of lost where I was going on that whole thing. But that was funny, man. Good job on that one. All right, you got it. Hey,
All right. How about
go
I
ahead.
pulled up the Huffington Post.
Oh, I love the Huffington Post.
I can almost never pull it up because I get too angry.
Yeah.
Uh, God, they say stupid things on there. But yeah, don't kill me for that. I'm just going to read a couple of headlines and see what sparks, because everything always sparks you.
Okay.
Roger
Ah,
Stone. Roger Stone, guilty on charges of lying to Congress, witness intimidation. I don't know about that. I have not heard about that. Do you know about that?
I know very. You know what? Anne Marie brought that up. This first thing this morning, she said, "Okay, they convicted him guilty," and I said, "Wait, who's Roger Stone?" I'm sorry, I just didn't even know who he was.
Oh, okay.
Um, so that one slipped past the goalie.
No problem. Yovanovitch.
Okay.
Did I say that right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yovanovitch
Ivanovic.
responds
Yes.
to Trump Twitter attacks in real time in impeachment hearing. I don't know what those attacks were.
I don't know what the attacks are either. However, I was watching the first part of her testimony this morning, and it was a very interesting thing. I saw Nunes. He had his opportunity to speak, and what he was basically saying is, "You haven't spoken to the president in 2019. Is that correct?" Yes, correct. Um, do you have any knowledge of the conversation between Zelensky and Trump? No. Any has anyone told you anything? No. And then he ends up saying, I'm finding it hard to understand why you're even here. You have nothing to do with this. You know nothing, and this I got to tell you, this seems like nothing. I don't.
Totally
I'm
agree.
confused. What is it? I don't see it. Again, I'm a Republican, but I don't want a corrupt Republican president. But I'm
Correct.
not seeing the corruption here right
And
now. Well,
especially
if
when you
someone could explain
follow
that
the
to me, that would
path.
be great.
When you follow the path of the Russian conspiracy, which
Yes,
just, okay, so that doesn't work. So we're going into collusion. Or wait a minute, what did it
it was
downgrade to?
collusion with the Russians, and
And then
yeah,
it downplayed to I forget what, and now it's turned into this. It's like we'll find something. We'll find
well,
something
what
somehow.
is the crime? I'm hearing quid pro quo.
Oh no, they don't use that term anymore.
Yeah.
That is simply an exchange of favors.
And
Um,
is there something wrong? Is there something illegal about that?
well, okay, so the charges are that he was conspiring with was it Ukrainian
Yeah.
president, trying to get dirt on Biden for presidential race reasons, something like that. And I don't, the big argument is that basically everything a president does or any politician does is trying to get something for something.
That's right. That's their job. So it
That
seems like
is
they were
pretty
trying to
much the job.
impeach him for
But
doing his job.
you know what? I wish the Democrats would start doing their job. Stop all this bullshit that they've been doing for 3 years
I wish
already.
that too.
Yeah.
Well, they're, but the problem is that they're stopping everyone else from doing their job as well. I mean, they've basically put a gum into our system, and now we can't move forward.
I have cleaning ladies wanting
That's
to clean my
hilarious,
office.
Barry. I saw that.
I hope I didn't say that politically incorrect.
You
But
probably did. It's a
probably.
politically incorrect show.
That's
So
true.
good
That's
job.
true. And I got to get on the artwork. I
All
hope
right.
by the next time I will debut our cover art for over 50 starting over
Love to
podcast.
see that. And hey, Barry, this has been once again a great show, a great conversation. I'm glad we're doing this, and I'm looking forward to the next time. You got some great takes, and what I particularly
Huge one.
love is that here's a Democrat and a Republican, very civil. We love each other, and
Yes.
although we won't talk about all the times that we spontaneously wrestled each other.
I'm gonna kick your ass.
Well, that was all fun.
We got some good stories there.
All right.
All right, man.
We'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too, Barry.
All
Bye.
right. See you.